Welcome to Community Matters, the podcast where we uncover the people behind the places that make our communities thrive. From retail to housing, commercial to FM, we share stories from the leaders reshaping how we live, work and play. In today's episode, we bring you insights from a panel of industry leaders that joined us at Real Talk at MRI Software's 2025 North America Ascend. Here, our Chief Marketing Officer, Mandira Mehra, explored how AI, data, technology, and generational changes are shaping more inclusive and connected communities. Let's jump in and take a listen.
Well, thank you all for joining us today. We're going to transition to a slightly little different mode. Less talk about MRI and more just having, let's say, an important conversation that I think we're all thinking about here. And I'm super excited that we're having our first Real Talk panel at an MRI Ascend. And some of you may be familiar with Real Talk. Maybe you've attended one of the sessions at RealCom or other industry events. But I wanted to, actually, before I jump in, let me introduce our panelists. I'm sorry, I was getting so excited about explaining the concept. First, I'm going to introduce our panelists. Then we're going to talk about what Real Talk is. So first, right next to me here, I have Cecilia Li, who is the Chief Information Officer at Urban Edge, one of our clients, near and dear clients. Then you know Carla. You've heard from her a bit today. Next to Carla, we have Tama Huang, who is the Chief Strategy and Growth Officer at Cherry, a partner of ours. And right at the end, we have Susan Avelluto, our Chief People Officer at MRI, or Chief Pride Officer, as we like to say. So, and we're here to talk about people and how we empower people through technology. So, as I was saying, this is our first time having a Real Talk conversation here at Ascend. And Cecilia, I wanted to ask you, tell us a little bit about this Real Talk initiative. What were the origins? How did it get started?
Sure. Well, believe it or not, Real Talk was in part inspired at an MRI conference 3 years ago when you and Carla approached Tama because you guys wanted to have a difficult conversation all around the subject of talent and people. And what we thought would be a challenging conversation turned out to be very inspiring, so much so that after that event, a couple of industry leaders, including Tama, myself, Susan from Elms Community, Helene Stein from Brixmore, and who else am I forgetting? Eileen from, how can I forget Eileen? Hello, Eileen from Heinz, CEO of Heinz now. We got together and we thought, you know what, that conversation was so important, was so inspiring, and how can we continue shaping the future of the real estate industry? And so that's how we decided to do it, one conversation at a time, having real conversations.
Okay, great. Well, the conversation we want to have today, obviously we're at a technology conference here. You heard this morning, you saw a lot of the new solutions that MRI is launching, and heard from Carla where we're heading next. And, you know, ultimately, though, technology is really in service of our people and about unlocking the potential of our people. So, Tom, I wanted to get started with you, and can you tell us how leaders can ensure that the technology they invest in aligns with the evolving needs of their workforce?
Sure, thanks, Mandira, and I'm really happy to be here and kind of continuing Real Talk in real estate, and as Cecilia said, just kind of one conversation at a time. Let's level set on some facts, okay? Number one, the passing of time does not stop, despite my best efforts. Protein every morning, face cream every night. The passing of time does not stop. Number two, the growth of data does not stop. We are hoarders. More about that in a little bit. And number three, the proliferation of AI is not going to stop. Okay? If we can all agree that these three are facts in terms of our reality right now, let's go to we've moved from a TV generation of baby boomers to the PC generation of Gen X, okay? And it was the baby boomers, like, you had to go to the television, you couldn't record, you couldn't rewind, you couldn't fast forward, you couldn't binge. There was a time and a place to go, and that is all you got, and that's what you got to watch. The Gen Xers was the first time we got to tell a machine what to do. That is the first time we went from a monologue to a dialogue. I mean, very, very limited dialogue, but we got to tell the machine what to do. Then we get to the millennials, and I think of the millennials as the generation where patience ended. Okay? Why? Because some of us may remember that you would call the voice recording at the movie theater and, just missed the one movie I wanted, gotta go listen to the whole thing again. Millennials have no patience for that. They have no patience for needing to wait for the VHS cassette to go back to Blockbusters because before I could rent the latest movie. They had no patience for MSN and Carta to be published once a year with all of the knowledge that we now have at our fingertips. Okay, so millennials, the end of patience. Apologies to the millennials in the room, but that's how I remember you. Okay, then we get to kind of the Gen Z. Gen Z is probably all the people that are working for us right now. Right? And Gen Z is the first mobile generation, the first generation that went from, I don't have to go to a place to work anymore because work comes with me. The key to an office became a password to an application. That's Gen Z. And if we think about Gen Alpha, right, let me introduce you to my children. Okay? They are natively growing up with generative and agentic AI. So the time does not stop, and we need to acknowledge these are the generations in our workplaces today. And we've all grown up with a different relationship with different technologies, and we all need to coexist, okay? Number 2, data. Big data, big data, big data, okay? As the generations have passed, storage became bigger and cheaper. Bandwidth became faster, and processing speeds became more powerful. And we have been hoarding data. 30 years of historical data, we have been hoarding data. And all of that data, by the way, is fed and trained our large language models that fuel the generative AI, the capabilities that we'll get to leverage today. So think about it. Every academic article, every instruction manual to every device and appliance, every cat video, okay? Every 6-7 meme. Told you I would do it, okay? So, and as we go forward, right, how do we turn that big data, or I would say, how did you used to do that in the last millennium, like in the 1990s? like I said, I introduced you to my kids. It's about getting the right data for the right purpose at the right time, okay? And so this is, to me, kind of like back to the question that you asked, Mandira, which is, what is it that we ask of technology companies today? So we ask that you understand the different generations of users. We ask that you understand the difference between singular systems of truth for data for decision making, data for reporting, because as we look back, we do not want multiple truths for the data that you report on. But as we look forward, we need your systems to be able to hold multiple truths, because data for decision making is about different people looking at the same data for different purposes at different times of a process, month-end close process, year-end close process, whatever that process might be. So for all of you in the room, right, human-powered and AI-powered, that is the workforce of your future. And one of the greatest challenges for us is knowing what AI cannot know, because we need to be very cognizant of when to inject the human into the loop, right? We can't give up the things. Like, we need to be very cognizant about absolutely knowing what AI cannot know and making sure that we do that. And for all of us, right, it is about moving from pilots. I think you talked a lot about everyone is trying stuff, from pilots to platforms, okay? It's okay, we're all piloting right now. It's a community that we're in. We need to move from agents to operations. Agents are pilots, we're piloting them right now. How do we operationalize them? How do we get to enterprise grade? And most importantly, as we talk about data, how do we get from talk to truth? Okay, how can we get to trusted data, to knowing what data is being used for what purpose? So that's a long way of answering the question, but that to me is kind of where we're at right now.
It's so interesting to think about the change management that needs to happen across all of those generations and all of those changes that you just talked about. And historically, organizations have not been great. We've not been great at managing change. And you think about Gen Alpha, and you think about the millennials and the impatience for change management. That is a challenge that I think this group of leaders, right, really needs to think about, and how do we lead these organizations through change across multiple, generations and everything that's coming at us. It is a challenge, I think, like no other we've seen before.
Yeah, no, 100%. And Cecilia, as somebody who leads a lot of technology implementations for your organization, what are some of the strategies that you all have used at Urban Edge to bring your people along in that journey and to drive that change management?
Yeah. Sure. I mean, just for background, I don't know if I know everybody in this room, but I work for Urban Edge Properties, and we are a 150 people company, 76 properties across the United States on the North End corridor. And on an average, given the number of assets, employees that we have, we work on over 100 initiatives a year. That's a big number considering the size of our company. And how do you do that, right? Well, it didn't start off that way on day one, but we did establish a culture where technology is human-centric, where we're solving for people's problems. We're not implementing technology for the sake of implementing technology. I mean, you said it earlier, like there's so many ways in which we can potentially implement AI, but it's like the shiny object principle. Where do we go first, right? There's so many things, and how do you funnel and how do you prioritize? And so this is where we at Urban Edge are so big on also building that change management process and that building that committee. We're big fans of committees. We have committees for AI, committees for MRI, you name it. But why do we do that, right? It's because we are really building with our people. We're finding pain points and trying to solve for those problems. Because what's the point on, like I said, building technology for the sake of building technology, right? And what we find then is that people like to win. And so it almost gets contagious, right? Because when people see that, John Doe is doing the storytelling, because that's the other thing that we do through the change management process. We allow people to kind of voice their opinion, show, this is the pain point that I had, and this is how we've solved it. And when people see that technology is working for them so that they can be more efficient, the rest of the organization just follows suit automatically. So that's work for us. The other thing that we do is we want to make sure that we're very focus on what we're trying to achieve. So we align every single goal that we have with our corporate goals. So one of the rules within our committees are, you can come up with any ideas that you want, right? We want to hear about all of your ideas, but here's our 10 corporate goals, and your ideas need to match at least one of these 10 corporate goals. And then as a team, we make a decision. What is going to help the organization move the needle faster? And so that's how we really continue to propel our organization with technology. And we tie it to measurable outcomes. We use what we call OKRs, objective and key results. So, right? Every initiative has an objective and it has a key result that is then measurable. Right? And that after we launch, we focus very much on digital literacy. We invest not just on the implementation, we invest in our people, but then we have this training center of excellence where we then continue training our users on all of these technologies that we've built. Because then what's the point of just implementing and just leave it at die, right? And last but not least is our leadership buy-in. We always have to have a business sponsor that's behind all of our initiatives, because we want them to be the model, we want them to be the one that's driving. And in fact, I make them pitch to me why we need to implement this. And if they don't sound that they have conviction, it ain't happening. So those are sort of the key things that we do at Urban Edge.
Yeah, I think that, obviously the alignment with the corporate strategy and corporate objectives, so that technology is in service of advancing those. And most software companies will talk to you about the software alone without the people and the process behind it is nothing. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
And I know we're all concerned about, developing the next generations, but what you just articulated, that's a whole talent development strategy in and of itself, the mentoring part of it, the leadership part of it. That is a great way to ensure that you've got good change management and you've got really strong talent development strategy in place.
Yeah, absolutely. We also have a full-on mentorship program at Urban Edge where we are cross-training departmentally. You're not just an IT person, you're not just a leasing person. We want you to be a real estate person. And so we would team up, a leasing person with a development person, IT person with an accounting person, and so forth, because we want to learn from each other. We think of ourselves as a big ship, a big machine, and we're all working together towards one same goal.
Great. Well, and Carla, just in the spirit of that, this kind of idea of career growth and development, what role do you think that technology plays in enabling that growth and internal mobility and belonging within an organization, and particularly on the path to leadership?
Yep, I think it plays a huge role because, when we think about it, our world has changed a lot. There's a lot of dispersed teams that we all work with, and the technology's got to be there for that, because I think in order for you to be comfortable and to really succeed and step forward in your career, you do need that sense of belonging. And how do you get that sense of belonging if you are not right next to everyone every single day who you work with, which is not a real thing for us. It's not the situation anymore. I started just recently, I think I gave you an example, Mandira, that, we use Teams all the time. You all know that. We're very proficient at Teams at MRI. But we had our customer service week recently, and I challenged my entire team, so about 250 people globally, and I said, I would really like for you, each one of you, to send one praise note in Teams to someone on the support team one day, just each send one per day for a week. And I'm like, if we all send 5, it's going to be this, this huge number. And it wasn't even an hour into it when suddenly someone said, we should do this for other teams. And they started to get excited. And I kind of get chills when I think about it, because that's the kind of belonging and sense of that you want, because now they will start reaching out to people on other teams and start to draw them in. And that's going to make a difference for their career. They'll find mentors in there, right? They're going to find relationships. That's what we're built on. We're humans. We're relationship driven. And so I was really surprised by the enablement of relationships by technology whenever I saw that. And that was just a few weeks ago. So I think technology plays a critical role, but sometimes maybe not necessarily the role we think, maybe more about engaging and getting the relationships that help push careers forward.
At the same time, I think people data, while it's still in a lot of disparate places, I think I'm seeing a real shift towards kind of unification of people data coming together, which is really great, but we're going to have a lot of work to do on helping employees, Pride members, to believe in and trust, back to your point, Tama, trust in sharing their data. So for example, we have an opportunity in front of us right now where if I can bring together data that sits in our HRIS system with our learning data, and also interaction data, all of a sudden now I can start to serve up bite-sized learning that is going to help you in your day. That's what I'm really excited about, is being able to bring that kind of data together, because that's what's really going to help careers grow.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking, as Tama was talking about all the different generations and couple it with this whole mentorship and whole thing, one of the beautiful things that I see at Urban Edge is that we have these SVP, senior people that really know the business real well. Mm-hmm. And then you have these really, the younger generations that they, just grew up and on a computer, right? And seeing them work together, now you're seeing this reliance. I'm like, okay, can you do this, please? And then get me the information right now. And so all of a sudden, it works so nice that you have the knowledge plus the speed and the aptitude to work together. I mean, it's really worked very well at Urban Edge. And I'm quite sure that many of you are finding the same thing in this mixed age workforce that we're living in.
I think it's really important to create environments that feel safe, right? And environments that feel safe for somebody who didn't grow up in this industry to ask questions about the industry. How does this work? How does that work? But also for an environment where if you're not native to some of these new tools, to ask questions, right? There's no question that like that is a stupid question, right? And so, and trying and failing, and really, if we don't create an environment where you're allowed to fail quickly, fail uniquely, and fail often, you don't create a sense of belonging. And that truly is what people want. They want to belong to an environment and a culture where we get to experiment so that we can all succeed. And you don't succeed without failure. That's true. I mean,
it's part of the process, yeah.
It's learning.
Yeah.
That's what learning is.
Yeah. Well, and I love what you were saying about just that learning going both ways, right? I mean, we've all been experimenting with AI, with generative AI, and I've learned a ton from people on my team of just the different use cases and the ways in which they're leveraging a ChatGPT, for example, to try and solve different marketing problems, right? But yeah, and then I can bring maybe a little bit more years of experience and 10 years at MRI and ask the questions a little bit differently, but I got the use case ideas from them. Right? Yeah.
The whole idea of reverse mentoring, I think, is kind of coming back again. It's back in, just because for that very reason. And I think we, as we think about, the more mature generations, I'll call them, right? We can't be embarrassed to say, this idea of reverse mentoring is a really good thing. This is how we take advantage of new skill sets.
Yeah. Well, Susan, I wanted to ask you a question as well, and maybe shift to people entering the workforce. So. I mean, as a mom of 2 teenagers, I'm thinking about this a lot of like, what kind of skills do I need to make sure my kids have? But for all of us as leaders in the room that are recruiting new talent, there's so many stories in the news of AIs replacing entry-level jobs, et cetera, et cetera. But, obviously we have to keep bringing in new talent. They have to grow through experience, through middle management, right, to become leaders eventually. So what are the skills and experiences that we should be looking for as we think about attracting new talent and building a talent strategy for our organizations?
Well, I think what's really interesting is it almost hasn't changed in that the whole idea of grit, right? I think the whole idea of grit and really looking for the talent that's hungry and wants to learn and wants to be here, empathy. Right? I think we need to, we've got to look across all talent pools for empathy, because that's ultimately how people come together, and that's how organizations move forward together, is being empathetic and understanding each other and understanding the whole change process. I think we just need to look for people who are passionate. Right, it's the basics. It's still back to the basics, and of course, there's the tech literacy in which they're growing up with, which is fantastic. I do think, back to your question though, Mandira, I think that it's on us to rethink what our entry-level programs look like, because they're not the same anymore, right? It's not the same learning program that you start at the very beginning and you go all the way up. I think we need to reset the waterline and really think about what's the talent development strategy for your function. Where are you bringing talent in? At what point? What skills are they bringing with them already? And then what does that learning experience need to look like? The last thing I'll say on this, because I'm really passionate about it, there's no substitute for learning that gut instinct and understanding how to navigate an industry, right? Those are things that we've forgotten more probably than I get to say these things now with all this gray hair. But I think we really need to think about how do we impart that industry knowledge into entry level when they're coming in at a different level at this point. So these are really things we have to think about.
You've just articulated what I called earlier kind of the epistemic humility that we need to have around knowing what AI cannot know.
Yes.
Right? You talked about grit, you talked about passion, you talked about hunger, and those are the things, those are exactly the things that we need to be looking for. And, you know, if there were no gut or this kind of like decision making that comes from, you know, weighing kind of the history and the experience, then every real estate asset would sell for the same number.
Yeah.
Because it's an algorithm. Right? There wouldn't be any more investment committees.
That's a great point.
Because that's all gut.
Yeah.
That is all we're assessing. There wouldn't be a need for budgets. Just, you know, or forecasts. There wouldn't be a need for any valuation. We don't need to mark to market. It's just all done. So.
Yeah, no, that's right. I think one of the things that I always think about as well is the idea of curiosity, and that things are just moving so fast. And so, you know, bringing in people that have that curiosity to kind of keep learning and keep thinking and keep growing, right? And then, you know, I guess the other thing I'll say, we're all in the real estate industry here, right? We believe in the value of people coming together in person and congregating in spaces together. But of course, last 5 years, we've seen a lot of virtualization of, you know, organizations going entirely virtual, et cetera. It's swinging back the other way now. And I think that's because there's so much that we learn from those interactions with people, right? I mean, I was new to this industry when I joined MRI 10 years ago, and the way to learn about the industry is to get out there, go to the conferences, meet with clients, meet with partners, and understand the challenges that people are facing. So I think there's no substitute for just like getting out there and, you know, being with the people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, good. Well, did anyone want to say any final words? Otherwise I'll kind of wrap us up a little bit with some of the, hopefully a few takeaways for all the folks in the audience. But I think, you know, we kind of ranged across a few different areas related to how we empower people through technology, and particularly in this time of, you know, really rapid advancements with AI. So we talked about, hey, it's critical to start with the human element in adopting any new technology. Tama, I think your analysis of the generations and the different mindsets was super helpful there. And particularly when we have these kind of diverse intergenerational workforces, we really have to keep all of that in mind. Cecilia shared some ideas around how you bring people along the journey, anchor that in your company strategy, have measurable objectives that you're tracking against, and really kind of training and development to support that. Carla, you talked to us about what role technology can play in enabling connection and facilitating sort of networking for internal mobility, and particularly, you know, in a global company like MRI, you know, we come together in a number of offices, but we're also very dispersed, I should say, globally. So teams, et cetera, really important in keeping us all connected. And then Susan, really great thoughts around how we think about that entry-level talent and what we need to look for in that shifting waterline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think about it, and I say, I don't know if there's ever been this level of change since the internet, and since, you know, we got mobile devices in our hands. It's exciting. It's really exciting.
It is. It is. Well, before I let you all go, I just wanted to turn it over to you, Tama, if you want to let the folks in the audience know if they'd like to get more involved in Real Talk. What else is happening and how can they get involved?
Yeah, so I think, you know, one of the things that happens a lot at conferences is that everybody goes up on stage and talks about all of their successes. I did this implementation and it was easy. There's no implementation that's easy, come on, right? Like you have so many, like there's decision fatigue, there's validation fatigue, there's so much fatigue along the way, but nobody ever talks about those things. Nobody actually talks about, hey, these are the lessons I learned. If I could do this over, I would never do that again, or whatever those things are. And we kind of really came to realize that like conferences also need some real talk about real problems and real things that we were doing. And that's kind of, as Cecilia said, like, you know, what spurred this. So we've been bringing this to conferences. So the first year was just 1 or 2, and then we started going, and it is truly, I think we started with, you know, Redcon in the beginning of the year, then Realcomm,
Blueprint.
Pre-Tech, all the user conferences, OpTech if you're on the multi-site. We would love to have this conversation at every conference, at every industry gathering. So if you are part of something that isn't doing this, right? Like reach out to either Cecilia or I, we will get involved with the organizers. If you want to raise your hand and have your face on this slide next year, also get in touch with us, because it is all about, right, like as many people from different walks, different asset classes, different geographies, with different experiences. So that's really what we're looking for. So not the trophies in your bookshelf, but the scars on your backs. That's what we're looking for.
Love it. Well, thank you very much. And thank you all for having this conversation with me.